Hello everyone, welcome once again to the Bat Chat. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Steve Baxi.
Steve, finally, we finish up Volume 1 of Batman the Animated Series today with Dreams in Darkness. I can't believe we are already at the end of this.
Oh yeah, we're getting really close to Perchance Dream, which I think is just one episode away. So we're really neck deep into the series now.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that it was that early on Season 2 or Volume 2. I kind of forgot about that, especially because I found myself thinking about that episode a lot. Watching this for various reasons, and then also last one because it's a Mad Hatter thing.
Yeah, we're gonna get Eternal Youth next, and then after that it's Perchance to Dream, and then there's like a good roll of great episodes. So.
Oh, Eternal Youth! That'll be interesting.
It'll be hilarious, is what it'll be.
That is still one of those episodes that I have no idea what to think of. But anyway, so idea-wise, there's this bizarre build to Perchance to Dream, right?
Yeah, there is. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, because Paul Dini did write some of the stuff leading up to it.
Yeah, but the problem, of course, is that they didn't work on one episode at a time. I mean, when you listen to the guys that worked on the show talk about it, it always sounds like a frantic, mad rush to finish things. And it's like, and we have these guys over here working on this episode, we have these guys over here working on this episode, yeah. And it never sounds like they had that sort of forethought. I mean, like, it's really easy to go, I just hesitate, because it's really easy to go back to a thing like this and to look at it as an artistic piece and forget that it's a commercial thing that was made to fill time slots, and that to make a thing like that, you have to have a lot of people working on different episodes at once and that sort of thing. Especially when you're making like 50.
Yeah, I agree. Although it helps that a lot of them are drawing from the same kind of source material, so they all have kind of the same vision going in, even if they're making like 6 episodes at a time.
That's true, and obviously some episodes can inform others even in working on them at the same time, because these guys were obviously all working really close with each other. So
these guys go out and have parties like at the end of the week, so they all like talk to each other with their plots, and they all just threw ideas back at each other.
I mean, I would imagine that some of the themes and motifs and ideas that all wind up, in a lot of the same ones that wind up in different episodes, some of that might even be subconscious sometimes.
Oh yeah, probably so. And when you go in like to the future stuff, like Paul Dini doing his Detective Comics run, there's definitely a lot of episodes he wishes he wrote or things he did better going on in the comics.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get straight into it. If you are going to watch it with us, as always, get your Batman DVDs or your Amazon Prime. Get your Amazon Prime. Get your physical Amazon Prime. Get it out. Get it in your computer. And get ready to press play whenever I say now. Get a timestamp 0 past all the menus and all of that. And we are going to talk about Dreams in Darkness as you watch with us, or you can just listen to us and we'll try to provide a little bit of context for you. So Dreams in Darkness, make sure you're watching that episode, because if you're watching some other episode, this becomes something of a social experiment. Everybody, please press play right now. Okay. Let's do this thing. What'd you get, Steve?
Superman, Batman again. And this is one of my favorite episodes, so that's bound to happen. Every time I don't like the episode, it's the good intro.
I mean, it's like a 70-30 kind of thing, right? Like clearly it is the rare card. It's a holofoil, the one that you really want.
Yeah, exactly. This is my ultra rare fusion magic card.
Rare fusion. Rare Lance fusion. That is a word that has been coming up at an odd amount on our channel recently.
It's a cool word, I guess.
Lance Fusion! And then recently, this dates this video, but recently we were talking about Steven Universe on an episode of Primetime Crisis Live, and that has fusion as a concept, as part in the mythology, and now, all of a sudden, Steve finds himself using the word fusion once again.
Yes, because it's just a cool word.
So, I have this thing about superheroes in straitjackets. I don't know what it is. That's just immediately in a provocative image for me that I really like, and I think some of that comes from the impression that the first issue of Ben Edlund's The Tick left on me.
Oh yeah, when he's in a straitjacket in a cell.
The full splash page right at the opening, yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because Batman seems to be the easy one to put in a straitjacket. There were so many stories where what if Batman's crazy the whole time kind of concepts come out. Neil Gaiman's Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader being one of them, where there's a potential idea that Bruce Wayne's just crazy and Alfred pretends to be all of the bad guys. And you just see him periodically putting on different makeup to make himself look like the Joker or Penguin, and all in an attempt to make Bruce feel better.
I've never read that.
Oh, it's so good. It's one of the best Batman stories ever.
I've read the counterpart, Man of Tomorrow, but I never read that.
Yeah, you should definitely look into it. The trade is ridiculously overpriced because it's 2 issues and it costs like $15, but it's still really good.
It's hardcover though, right?
Probably. I'm not sure if the hardcover would still be in print at this point. But yeah, the hardcover version is still really nice. It's got really nice recolored pages and everything.
I feel like one of the great things that Kevin Conroy does with his Batman is the way he yells.
Yeah. Andrea Romano makes a really big deal out of the fact that she doesn't like making her voice actors yell too much because it's terrible for their voice and it hurts their longevity. But when you need it, you need it. And part of the reason they cast people like Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy as opposed to what's his name, the guy who was supposed to be the Joker, Tim Curry, is that they're able to do stuff like that without damaging themselves too much.
Right.
They're able to hold those kinds of screams and yells and grunts and stuff. And it's something the Batman the Animated Series uses sparingly. So when Batman yells, it's pretty frightening.
Steve, there is a little bit of foreshadowing for the episode that we're going to be watching after this because Batman is sneaking around a health spa.
Oh, yeah. He's just building this. He's just investigating that in the back of his mind, I guess.
One of the things that can be really fun about comic book fiction, especially the way we used to do it, and we sometimes do it this way now, but I feel like these days a lot of the time we feel the need to call attention to goofy-looking costumes. And look how goofy that is. I guess we just have to wear these things because it's a comic book thing. But I love that Batman goes up against this guy, and this costume is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, he looks like Mucilage Man, right? Like, it just looks ridiculous. And Batman is kind of just taking him seriously. Or maybe not taking him seriously so much as just not mentioning how stupid his costume looked.
I mean, when I first saw this, I thought he was just the evil dentist. It's hilarious. That's part of what I like about the DC animated universe is that they never stop and say this is funny. They just go with it all. Like we got Condiment King in an episode pretty soon. And no one bothers to say that he's ridiculous. And that's just one of the most absurd concepts ever.
That, of course, is one where it's obvious that he's supposed to be silly. They don't talk about it, but yeah. I mean, like, you know, that. Also, the countdown clock is for some reason on college-wide ruled paper. I don't know why that is, but it's on college-wide ruled lined paper.
It's all they could afford in that moment, I guess. I really like the music all the way through for this episode because it's another one of those like like a Vengeance where it's very detective heavy, it's very noir heavy early on, so you get kind of like a 1930s 1940s feel before you get to the asylum.
So I've been playing Arkham Knight, and as soon as Alfred walks up and Batman sees the Joker, I'm like, wow, Batman's having the same hallucination problems that he's having in this game I'm playing that's like 23 years after this, and I just think that's kind of fun. But as soon as that happened, I was like, wait a minute, am I still playing that game?
Yeah, and it's the same voice actor, so it's hard to separate the two, isn't it?
Well, and it's also the same. It's not the same situation, but it is still a Scarecrow plot, so it's the same character that's causing it. And it's also interesting because Batman isn't telling anybody that it's happening, just like, you know, he does in that game. And really, just like Batman always handles things like that, right? Where, you know, I can handle everything on my own. I don't need any help. I don't really trust anyone anyway. And, you know, right there in that moment, when he's hallucinating Joker, he's a liability. The moment that starts happening, he should hang up the cape and let somebody else handle it.
Yeah. And there are, and I won't spoil it for you because I know you haven't finished it, but there are moments in the Arkham Knight game where they do discuss that. And that's something in the Batman comics that we get a lot of, especially with the Robins. Because there's always that moment of Batman's going over the deep end and someone, namely Robin, has to be the one to pull him back.
Well, he's a walking contradiction because he surrounds himself with all these allies, but then he never uses them for any help, and so very often, he's not allowing them to help him out, and so he's like, well, why are you affecting these people's lives and putting them in these costumes and wrapping them up into your insane, psychotic, crazy world, and then not even allowing them to help you out because you think that you can do it all on your own?
Although to be fair, that is a more recent thing. Like pre-90s, Batman wasn't that way. The moment Chuck,
sure, yeah,
the moment,
but
like,
I
Chuck
would
Dixon
argue
left,
that
it wasn't
this
there.
version is. I mean, I would argue even like it's subtler. The Arkham games are all about that, but or not all. Arkham Knight is all about that. But I think he's still even like that a little bit here.
Yeah, it's a little bit more here, and it starts a little bit more near the end of Alan Grant's run in the comics. So it's definitely been built in for a while, and it's in this series. But before that, before like the '80s stuff and the '70s stuff, Batman and his allies were a lot more tightly knit than people give him credit for.
Yeah, and his Batmobile here just gets like actually crushed up and mangled.
Oh
It's
yeah,
really cool how that's actually drawn.
that terrified me as a kid, because I've never seen that happen before. Batman getting in a car accident.
You know what's scarier though? What's always really scary to me is first-person POV of a person in a gurney at a hospital. I don't know why that is. It's just absolutely terrifying. You got the sterile environment, usually like whitewashed walls, and then like as soon as you open your eyes, it kills your corneas. Of course, here it's darker, but then that's unsettling in a different kind of way. And it reminds me a little bit of an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Oh yeah,
where this character wakes up and you get a lot of it from the first person POV, and he can't move and everybody thinks he's dead, and it always reminds me of that.
Yeah, there's an episode like House. There's an episode of House where the entire episode is seen from the perspective of a guy who can physically see and think, but no one can hear. No one can talk to him. He can't speak, so you're just looking at the ceiling for most of the episode, and it's really unsettling. And Batman in a straitjacket, like you said, is a really provocative image. A lot of this comes from Alan Grant's The Last Arkham, which is another story where Batman gets thrown into Arkham Asylum because he's investigating a bunch of murders, and Jeremiah Arkham thinks that Batman's just insane, and so they try to keep him there. I'm not sure if Norman Brayfogle is the one who drew it. He's usually the one that works with Alan Grant. But it's one of those early stories that made Arkham Asylum a really terrifying place, because you've got Serious House and Serious Earth, and then afterwards you just have an onslaught of Arkham stuff like Living Hell and the Arkham games and stuff.
I would argue that if it weren't for all that stuff, we wouldn't have had the Arkham games. I mean, I think that at some point Arkham became synonymous with Batman.
Yeah, it wasn't there a lot early on. I think maybe it's tough to say because Arkham's like a recurring location for a while, but I think Dennis O'Neil is really the guy that made it more terrifying. A lot of that coming from Neil Adams' artwork.
Well, one of the neatest ideas for me in Arkham Asylum, the video game plays this out brilliantly, is the notion that Arkham Asylum is the Batcave of the villains, and maybe Batman belongs there with them. And the idea of is Batman crazy because of his obsession, and does he have a psychosis? Is he and because of all that, is he a hero, or does he just do it all for himself? Is it all just a straight up selfish thing?
Yeah.
And then of course with heroes, you always have the question of we're trying to pull apart the selfishness from the selflessness, and if you can ever really do that. But as far as the crazy Batman idea, like as you said, it is somewhat of an obvious place to go. But given that Batman arguably created a lot of his villains, and that he has an unsettling amount in common with them, this idea that Arkham is his hell because he put all his enemies there, and that would be the worst place for him to be, but also in certain ways maybe he sort of belongs there. I don't feel like this particular story is exactly about that. I mean, I feel like it touches on it and provides the landscape.
Yeah.
But it's kind of more about having Batman. I don't know if he's in this particular story, if he's facing his own madness so much as facing his his greatest fears, and that it's placed in Arkham because it's just a really scary and appropriate place to do it.
Yeah, a lot of that might just be coincidence, because it's really hard to say how much of this was intent. Like, the idea of Bruce being reminded of his parents while he's sitting in Arkham Asylum is great, but then you have to chalk a lot of that up to fear toxin. So it's hard to say how much of that goes hand in hand. But with that said, the idea that Batman can't get away from Arkham, because this show is famous for the line, "I am vengeance, I am the night," and I've never really liked that line, but it works for this version, because when you talk about Batman creating a lot of his villains and Batman being as crazy as them and tying so much of his efforts to fix the city into a place where he locks up all the criminals that he had a hand in creating, it really does speak to vengeance. Like, Batman is visibly angry at the system that creates Arkham Asylum, at the system that
Right.
perpetuates the criminals there, and he's not just terrified of being there, but he's also vehemently angry at the fact that he can't fix it. There's great moments in Arkham City where Bruce Wayne's got those speeches where he wants to tear down Arkham City, and it's some of the most passionate we see Bruce Wayne ever get, where he just can't stand the fact that Arkham is infesting the world as much as it is.
Yeah, and yet the question is always, would you have something like Arkham City if you didn't have Batman in the first place? And like, it's
Yeah.
consuming the city, and he's making that happen. And so not only can he not just can he not destroy that. I mean, like not only does he kind of hate the system that's created that, but in attempting to fight against it, he's just making it worse,
Yeah.
and is weirdly a part of it, or has kind of changed it to be something sort of grotesque and wrong, depending on how you look at it. But what I like about that is there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I don't want to make this whole thing a review of those games. I think it's really easy to go there, especially
Yeah.
with where our heads are right now, having played Arkham Knight. What do you think of the image of the giant gun?
Oh, I love it. Batman and guns are always interesting images. And that moment where you see him chasing after his parents and the tunnel becomes the gun. That it's not only the symbol of the thing that made him lose everything and create the world he's in right now, but he's actually headed to his own death because he's running after the gun. That the only end for him is also death. And
Yeah.
it's not just in a physical sense, but in a mental sense. Because no matter how hard he tries, no matter how much he makes the city better, it's not going to be good for him. There's never a Batman story where he makes the world a better place and he stays the same person. Uh,
Yeah, he's somewhat of a self-destructive character. I mean,
yeah,
right? I mean, to a degree, because he's, the question is always, is it about him making the world a better place, or is it about him simply feeling like he must fight this thing
yeah.
all the time? And he knows somewhere, regardless of his vow to fight until he doesn't have to fight anymore, that he will always have to do that. And that's not good for anyone. He's forcing himself to become something less than human.
Yeah, and I think that's an idea that's been in Bruce Timm and Paul Dini's mind ever since the beginning. Because you get to the Justice Lord's episode of Justice League, and you get the Justice Lord Batman, who says that they've created a world where no 8-year-old boy will lose his parents because of some punk with a gun, and Batman agrees with him. And when he sees how controlling the world is, the first thing he tells Justice Lord Batman is that Mom and Dad would be proud. And
Wow.
yeah, it's a really
And
good
that's
episode.
and that's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
It's mortifying that like he actually agrees with him. I mean, you'd think that he would that if
Well,
Batman were to face that.
Well, I mean, he says it aggressively. So he's saying it.
Yeah.
He's saying it so just Lord Batman sees how far he's fallen. But
Oh, that he's gone too far.
yeah,
Yeah.
but at the same time, he does agree to it at a point. And even though he doesn't like the end result, the question is still, well, given 10 years, would he not agree more with that?
I wonder, looking at this right now, if there's not a lot of kind of metaphoric imagery in some of the, not just character stuff, like not just like characters that Batman hallucinates, but also landscape stuff. Again, not so much that a lot about the story itself gives us some of the ideas that we were talking about earlier, with Batman maybe being crazy. But when he walks down that staircase in the bottom of Arkham, it looks just like the Batcave.
Yeah, yeah, it does.
That can't be a coincidence.
No, I don't think it is. And the fact that the cave is infested with the Joker and the Penguin and his other villains, I think speaks a lot to the fact that he keeps trophies in the Batcave here. The big thing that
That's
this series,
interesting. Yeah.
the big thing that this series keeps is that Batman has models of like Two-Face's head and Joker cards and stuff, and even when he's
Two-Face significantly throws the giant coin at him. I mean, it turns
yeah.
into something else. But...
Yeah, but the fact that even at home he can't get away from the mental places these villains bring him to.
Well, I'm sure, and I'm not sure how to read it, that there's got to be something symbolically going on with the fact that they're enormous.
Yeah. A lot of, and I guess Arkham displays a lot into this. The Arkham Knight game particularly, where Batman's always in over his head. That there's always more people after him than he could ever realistically combat. And I guess
and yet he never allows himself to stop or to find some other way or.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, and they don't touch on this too much, but I think a lot of times Batman is afraid of the fact that his villains make a better point than he does.
Oh yeah, good call.
We talked about this story earlier
well,
over.
Dark Knight with the Joker has that, right?
Oh yeah, Dark Knight has that.
His ideology almost beats Batman because he almost proves it by going too far with like dropping people from high places and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, and in a lot of ways that is kind of a defeatist ending at the with Dark Knight, and the Joker does win in a lot of ways with that movie.
Yeah.
But we were talking about this story earlier, Batman Identity Crisis, not the Brad Meltzer one, but the Alan Grant story from the 90s, where Batman...
I just gotta say this really quick. This guy on the microphone that's working with Scarecrow looks like a fat clock king. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, you're right, he does. But the Identity Crisis story deals a lot with the fact that Scarecrow and Batman are the same person, but Scarecrow sees himself as more noble in his goal, and Batman agrees with him, and the only thing that pulls him out of it is the fact that Robin shows up. And I think that's been a thing in Batman comics ever since the 80s and the 90s. The idea that Batman needs other people to pull him out of the darkness because the darkness is so self-destructive that you could see him without a Robin for a couple of years just letting the city go to hell. That he just would not be able to symbolically combat everything that he's created.
Getting back into specifically the episode, we talked over a lot of the scenes with the Doctor. I did, watching this again, find it a little bit odd that the Doctor, and kind of obvious and routine, or kind of typical, that the Doctor, even though Batman is saying things that turn out to be true about the fact that like Scarecrow's not in a cell and stuff like that, he still decides Batman's crazy and like doesn't go any farther than that. It seems a little bit odd.
Yeah, you're right. I guess if they play up the more Arkham is a corrupt place kind of thing, it would maybe work better.
Yeah, but we're bringing that to it, right?
Oh yeah,
that's
definitely.
Not really here.
Yeah, that's definitely something the series maybe could have worked on a little bit more. And that's something Batman just never deals with, the fact that he's got all this money, all this influence, all these charities, all these Gotham reconstruction attempts. He never fixes Arkham for some reason.
Good point. It is bizarre production, and then you get into the comics in 52, and eventually his house becomes Arkham.
Yeah, really.
But with I think it's weird production wise that this episode comes so soon after the one with the Scarecrow and the kind of the somewhat lame football plan, because it almost comes off like, if you watch them back to back, it almost comes off like Scarecrow's like, why don't I just go to and he calls this an experiment, makes a big deal out of it. It's like, why don't I just go to the source of what I'm really fascinated by and screw with Batman? Like,
yeah, no, that's a good
question. And I know he's doing more than that, but you know what I mean, like.
Yeah, it just hammers home the point that these writers didn't know what they wanted to do with Scarecrow, so they just kept trying things. I think this is probably their most successful.
And we've got to have our obligatory factory explosion.
Yes, very 89.
You've always got to have those in Batman, yeah. I think that some of the things that Batman is afraid of in the moment are really kind of random and somewhat generic.
Yeah, especially
like,
the last
snakes!
scene.
Yeah.
Well,
And because of that kind of thing, I don't want to read too much into some of the imagery with the villains, right? Where like you can start reading stuff and you might be able to come up with some interesting things, but at the end of the day, a lot of that really kind of just is Batman's got a big rogues gallery and here are the bad guys. Like you could pretty easily take any superhero character in a cartoon and give them that scene. You take Darkwing Duck and have Negaduck like rover him, and like you could do that with anybody. You could do that with Tick and with with the Tick and Chairface, and you do it with anything.
Yeah. Clearly they weren't thinking immensely deep the way we were talking about the episode. But I like that it works on that level.
I just want folks to know that I'm not meaning to read into this more than what's really there, but because this series is so influential, and this episode certainly, at least to some degree, must have influenced some Arkham stuff, and obviously, you were talking about Grant and stuff earlier. It had, there's a progression. It's impossible with everything we've seen playing with these ideas and with Arkham and with the psychology of Batman, whether or not he's insane, not to think about all of that stuff when you're looking at this episode. It's just impossible to separate it all.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of bits and pieces all over multimedia. You've got video games, you got books, you've got movies, and everything explores Arkham to different degrees. We didn't talk about at all how the fact that Batman Begins uses quite a bit of this plot, and Arkham Asylum plays a totally different role there.
That's right. Something else we didn't talk about were the 89 influences and the fact that Jack Napier is name dropped.
Yeah.
And that's consistent because they bring that back in Phantasm.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, and speaking of 89 and that whole Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher franchise, the whole Joker hallucination thing was what Batman 5 was going to be. So some of
that's right. And weren't they going to bring in Harley Quinn and have like some dream sequences where they brought Jack back? Yeah,
because Harley was, if I remember right, Harley was supposed to be his daughter in that version, and they were going to bring Jack Nicholson back as like a fear toxin induced hallucination, just like the way it is here.
That would have been really cool. And Jack Nicholson would have done it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I really wish that movie would have been made.
I wish they had, too, because he would have been older, and it would have made it a lot creepier, and they probably would have gone a little bit farther with it, because if Schumacher had been allowed to do what he wanted to with Batman, and I don't want to go too far into this, but he would have made something with a lot of horror influences. I mean, this is a guy who's directed horror films and loves dark stuff, and I'm just pretty sure that if he had gotten his hands on even like a hallucination version of the Joker and they let him do whatever he wanted to, it would have been creepy.
Yeah, he would have been very early psychedelic Batman, which we hadn't seen yet, and that would have been interesting.
That's a good point. Was that Triumphant? Is that the script we're talking about? Or
I think it's
was
Triumphant.
It some variation on that?
Yeah, I think it's Triumphant. Although I think there's been a couple of names that got kicked around for that movie.
That script exists. I've never read it, but it's around.
Apparently, but Warner Brothers have it locked up in a vault somewhere, and not many people have read it.
Oh, I thought it was like a thing that you could get your hands on.
I mean, I've been trying for years to get my hands on it, and I haven't had any success yet. So.
Oh, drat! I'd really like to read that.
Yeah, me too. It sounds really interesting. It's what Joel Schumacher would have wanted all the way through. Man-Bat was potentially supposed to be in it. Ewan McGregor might have been Scarecrow, and that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
I forget what else was supposed to happen there, but I think Mad Hatter would have been there. Batgirl could have been there. It would go off the heels of Batman and Robin, but do something a lot darker with the same sort of color palette.
It would have been really funny if that opened with all those characters acting exactly the same way they did, and then things get so heavy that all of a sudden they're just totally different.
That'd be awesome. It sounds a lot more interesting than the other movie that was rumored, Batman Dark Knight, by Joel Schumacher as well.
What was he doing with that? Because I don't even know.
It was supposed to be something that was more of a direct sequel to Batman and Robin.
Okay.
Man-Bat was going to be the main villain for that one, along with Scarecrow, but it wasn't going to be anywhere near as psychedelic and interesting as Triumphant. It was more like a dumbed-down version of that, because they couldn't get that passed.
Of course they couldn't.
Yeah, and then after Dark Knight, we were going to get Batman Beyond, and we didn't get Batman Beyond, and we didn't get Darren Aronofsky's Batman Year One, and then we didn't get anything until Batman Begins.
Right. Well, anyway, we can sit here and talk about Batman history all day, but we're going to go ahead and leave everybody for now, and we will see you again next time with one of the more bizarre episodes of the show.
Yeah, it's
and,
really strange.
That's going to be interesting. It seems like anytime you go, you kind of give Alfred an episode, it gets odd. Or
That's
is it just
true.
that one?
No, Alfred's got a history of that. In The Batman, there's an episode where Alfred meets one of his old buddies and they go treasure hunting. It just seems like every time Alfred's by himself in a Batman show, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and then Gotham.
Yes, and then Gotham. Although Beware the Batman did a fantastic solo Alfred episode.
I haven't seen all of that yet.
Oh,
I should. It's
right.
like 13 episodes, but yeah.
26.
Right. Oh, is it that many?
Yep, they got to do a.
Oh.
They got pulled off the air before all of them aired, and then Toonami did like a marathon of all 26.
Okay, that's what it was. All right. Well, anyway. Thanks for watching, folks. We will see you again next week. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Steve Baxi.
Thanks very much for watching.